So just the other day, we spoke about how gold has hit over 30 record highs in just 7 months. In other words, gold continues to go up and hit new record highs. It seems like every week, and it doesn't seem like it even wants to stop. And as you guys know, I call coin shops and I ask them how it's going, but I always focus on just the last couple of weeks. But what about the entirety of the 7 months time from March until today when gold continues to go up and silver as well? Well, I wanted to know, and so what we're doing today is calling a coin shop owner, and we're going to ask him some tough questions about the last 7 months. How is gold and silver prices going up affecting the business in his store? What can we expect with premiums going forward? And I even asked him the very tough question of what happens if it continues for another 7 months? When will gold and silver become unaffordable for most people? And this coin shop owner I spoke with is Josh from Minot Coin and Bullion. Now, I'll give you a pre-warning. This is kind of a long interview, so if you want, just minimize the screen and listen to it. You don't have to watch him talk, just listen. But I asked him a lot of great questions with some fantastic answers and some great insight. So I hope that you guys stick with me for this entire video. But really quick, before we get into it, do me a favor. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. We are almost at 200,000 subscribers, and I'd love for you to be one of them.
So I went down to the water and found my fate, because I don't wanna be stuck in the good old days. That's when you say, I swear you ain't seen nothing.
Check out the brand new Cross and Flag gold bars at my channel sponsor sdbullion.com. Get yours today. All right, so once again, we are joined by Josh from Minot Coin and Bullion, Minot, North Dakota. Josh, how are you, my friend?
Doing really well. How about you?
I am doing great. There's been a lot going on, though, with metals. Gold hitting a ton of record all-time highs since March. I talked about in another video, last week, how they hit over 30 record highs between March, 30 daily closing all-time highs between March and September of 2024. And I know we've talked about this in the past, and we're also going to touch on silver for you guys, here interested in silver more than gold. But I want to start with the gold thing. We've touched on it in parts in the past, but I want to get an overall picture of what business has been like between March and today for you and your shop, with gold continuing to go up over a 6-month period.
Well, I can tell you we're busy. I'll start with that. I mean, we're very, very busy. Fall, this time of year, we are technically in fall now. Late summer, early fall typically isn't a very busy time in our industry, at least in my own experience. I've been in it for 10 years, so not a real long time, but enough to have a sample size, I guess. But this year's an exception, and I think the uptick in both silver and gold prices have played into that. There's been a lot of activity in the shop with buyers, with people wanting to sell, with people just wanting to come in and ask questions about the metal because it's in the news now. So in terms of, how the last 7 months been, I would say busier than average. I mean, we're going to have a record sales year again this year. I mean, we're beating each year over year over year. Of course, it helps since we sell mostly bullion and spot price is higher. So of course, our sales are going to increase because our product, the price that we're selling in gold and silver, is going to increase. But we are seeing increases just because of the added, I don't want to use the word frenzy, but I'm going to, the added frenzy of the high gold prices. That's really, I guess, awakened a lot of people who maybe don't own precious metal, who are maybe now more apt to ask questions about it and perhaps even purchase it as well.
In the last 7 months, have you seen a marked increase in new customers? In other words, people that never been in precious metals before. And I know you're going to say yes, but what I mean is people that are actually walking in and not just inquiring about it, but new people buying. Have you seen more new people buying this last 7 months than in previous years?
Definitely.
Okay.
And it's not just because of the interest or the awakening of people because gold is in the news. I think a big part of it is people are waking up to the reality of the weak dollar, the poor state of the economy, growing distrust in financial institutions. I mean, there's a lot of things that, on an individual level that we can see and measure ourselves that are making people want to find other stores for their cash because they realize that their dollars, holding their wealth in dollars, all of it isn't going to do them favors in the long run because of inflation. and other things that I just touched on. So I think because of that, just gauging, other people's reasons on why they come into the shop, because we always have conversations. They're going to tell me, well, I think this and that about the world, and I'm thinking about doing this and buying this kind of metal. And I hear that all the time. And it's the frequency, as you asked, is increasing, especially over the last 7 months, because there is a lot of, I guess, economic uncertainty on top of metals starting to really perform well. And they do kind of go hand in hand.
With those new people coming in, are they buying a large amount, or are they just kind of dabbling in it, like buying a little, gram bar, or maybe a 10th ounce gold eagle, or
both? Honestly, I think a lot of it is there's some hesitance on people's parts to, if they don't own any precious metal and never have, it takes some guts to pull the trigger and drop $100,000 on precious metal on your first time. And I don't, excuse me, I don't necessarily recommend anybody does that. How can I put this? I don't want to tell people they should go at it slowly. That's not necessarily the best strategy either, but you should go at it methodically and make sure you're comfortable with the level of purchasing the level of purchase that you're making. So to answer your question though, yeah, there are some people, it might be a young college age kid. We get a lot of high school and college age, both men and women, males and females, that come in buying precious metal. And that's a demographic that I didn't really see very much the last 5, 6, 7 years. So a lot of times they're the ones with not a lot of disposable income, and they're the ones that might come in and save up and buy a 10th ounce gold eagle. But then I have individuals, I mean, we're in North Dakota. Farming is a big part of our economy up here. So we have a lot of farmers. I get a lot of farmers that come in from small town North Dakota, smaller than Minot. And they're going to buy metal for the first time, and they're 80 years old. And they're the ones that aren't afraid to, do a 5 or 6 figure purchase because they've just had that cash sitting in the bank all these years. And then, as I said, they realize it's not doing them any favors. So, and there's everything in between as well. I mean, some people will come in and buy 1 ounce of gold or a couple ounces, or so it's really all over the board. I'm seeing all different sizes of transactions for people buying from all different demographics.
So when somebody comes in and they buy a lot of gold, there's, I get a lot of comments from people that ask, what do you do with it later down the line? Let's say they need to liquidate it. What concerns do they need to have there as far as selling it and then, taking the cash back to the bank with reporting purposes and things like that? Like, they should probably keep records of everything they buy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I provide receipts. A lot of people ask, well, what's this for? I said, well, that's for your record. And they said, well, am I going to have to pay taxes when I sell this? I said, well, it depends. If you have a capital gain or a capital loss based on the laws right now, that's your obligation to do the reporting, unless it passes certain thresholds where I have to do the reporting. I'm buying back large amounts. And without grabbing my anti-money laundering book, I don't remember the thresholds. But for example, I believe I remember this one, if you buy over $1,000 face of 90% silver in a single transaction, I have to fill out paperwork and turn it into the IRS on that individual and on myself. Gold, there's certain thresholds, 20 ounces or more, but that does not include American gold. That's my understanding. So having said that, yeah, there are questions from people. Basically, I tell them what I know, and at that point, truly it's up to the individual. If, let's just say, somebody buys 50 ounces of gold from me today, 5 years from now, they want to sell 5 ounces. Well, unless the laws change, there's no obligation on my behalf to report that purchase from them. It's up to them with their receipts, whether or not they report capital gains or capital losses on their taxes. So most of the time, unless it's extreme circumstances in large quantities, it falls on the individual to do that reporting.
Yeah, and I think that's why I brought it up, is because, and I want to hear your thoughts on this as a coin shop owner. When somebody buys a bunch of gold, right, and then they go and sell it, if they don't have receipts to show that where they originally bought it, they're going to end up having to pay capital gains on the entire sale rather than just a profit. Am I wrong about that?
Honestly, I don't know. But there again, if you can't prove what you paid for it, your net cost of that gold is zero, I guess.
Right. That's what I was getting at. So yeah. Like, let's say I buy 5 ounces of gold at $2,500 an ounce, and that's $12,500, and I sell it for 15,000 down the line. If I have receipts to prove that I paid 12.5 to buy it, now I'm only on the books for $2,500 in capital gains that I have to pay tax on. But if I didn't keep receipts and I have no way to prove that, you know, what I paid for it or that it wasn't just given to me, then what protection do I have, you know, to say, oh, you know, now I owe the entire or the tax on the entire $15,000. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, don't you think if you just ask the IRS nicely, they would side with you?
No. And I know I jumbled it
Oh,
up a
I
lot.
swear I paid this much for it, but my receipts are gone. Yeah, that's not going to fly. So, unless changes are made, you know,
Yeah.
there could be changes by the time you go to sell. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up is because, you know, I've seen a lot of people buy a lot of gold, you know, at coin shows specifically, where they'll just, you know, pay cash for it. They won't get a receipt or anything. And I always question, and I understand the intent of buying gold isn't necessarily to just, you know, turn around and then resell it later. I mean, we buy it for different reasons, but the fact of the matter is cash is important and sometimes you have to sell. And so not having those receipts to prove what you paid for it originally, it just seems like a bad idea. I don't know.
Yeah, it's important to keep records, but I have customers that don't want their receipts.
Right. Yeah.
I give it to them. They say, "Oh, you can throw that away." I'm like, "Okay." So I crumple it up and throw it away. I keep my copy,
Right.
but yeah, I mean it's an individualized decision, and maybe they're buying it just to pass it along to their kids and their kids' kids, and you know they're hoping at that point the receipt isn't needed. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We'll see. So, getting back into the whole, you know, last 7 months with gold and silver, talk to me about a contrast between gold and silver. In the entire 7 months, not on a micro, not the last couple of weeks, but in this entire 7 months, even though gold has clearly went up more than silver has there been more interest in gold also, or is silver still getting a lot of interest?
Over the last 7 months, silver far and away has more interest. I think just from the price point perspective and the affordability perspective for customers. It hasn't been until the last maybe 6 to 8 weeks that I've noticed a big increase in gold interest, and it's so predictable. You know, we've talked about it before. As the spot price goes up, interest follows, and it's unfortunate because, to your point, a lot of new people that may be getting into gold are getting in now at, you know, current or around current all-time highs. You know, maybe in 6 months or a year, these numbers won't even look that high. Who knows? But silver remains the most popular still by far, except for this week in my shop. But I know we're talking about the last 7 months. But from a dollar perspective and what I sell over the last 7 months, far and away more silver by far.
So you said from a dollar's perspective, what about just raw volume? Like, you know, versus last year, how many ounces? And I'm not asking for exact numbers, but are you selling more ounces this year than you were last year, or is it just a dollar amount that's higher?
Yeah, I would say so, most definitely. I can just look at my purchase orders from my wholesalers and see how much more I'm having to order this year versus, you know, maybe the same month last year. So yeah, it's not just dollars, it's ounces also. The desire to hold metal has increased, at least in my region. More and more people are wanting to hold it.
Okay. Does that correlate though? You said you can look at your wholesaler receipts to see how much you've had to order, but you've also kind of had an increase in the number of people selling as well.
Yep.
So are you able to track that and see what you brought in that way as well to kind of compare those numbers?
Yeah, I do track that as well, and I have the receipts to back all that up, but I don't necessarily separate it out in my bookkeeping. So I can't look back 6 months and know what did I buy from the public this month, what did I buy from a wholesaler. I would have to go through my receipts and sift through it. But yeah, you're right. There are more people coming in to sell also, which has, in a sense, offset the need for me to use my wholesalers frequently. So, I mean, you know, we go back 3 months, I was ordering something every day. I was getting packages every day from my wholesaler. I mean, I was always ordering and more was coming in. Recently, the public has been able to supply me with inventory. So I've had to use wholesalers less, but we're still using wholesalers. And then to your point, wholesalers themselves can't move product to the level that they're used to, and they're getting inundated as well they got to liquidate it. So now they're selling it off to maybe a higher level, primary wholesaler. I don't know, can I use the word upstate?
Sure.
That we talked about. I think we weren't even filming yet, but now when that happens, a large wholesaler like Upstate, they're going to get inundated with product that their dealers or secondary wholesalers aren't purchasing from them anymore.
When will premiums react? I mean, is there a lag there, or will we see them come down pretty quickly if shops are able to continue to buying across the counter instead of going out, to a wholesaler to purchase it?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. There typically is a lag at the dealer level and the retail level versus wholesaler level, just because of timing and the time it takes to get product, the time it takes to actually need product. If you are having customers fulfill your demand in your shop, and I do still use wholesalers. I had, I think every day this week so far I had packages coming in, but maybe not to the level that I'm used to ordering because I've had so much come in across the counter. And I think other dealers are having similar situations where they're using wholesalers less. When do premiums react? Well, that's a tricky one to answer. But inevitably, if wholesalers get inundated with product and they can't move it, ultimately premiums have to come down in order for them to move product. So, and as I always say, I don't know any dealer or wholesaler that has infinite cash. So you can't always just continually buy and not sell. So in order to move that product, inevitably you do have to reduce premium. And we've seen this cycle happen so many times. It is a cyclical thing that does happen. Predicting when exactly it'll happen is difficult though, because not only are we seeing an influx in people selling across the counter. And I know you've talked to some shops that are saying they're not having to use wholesalers because they're buying so much from the public. Well, this is a little different than the last cycle because now spot prices have went up. Spot prices are up along with it. A lot of times it's when we have low spot prices, premiums can dip too because demand isn't there. People get kind of bored and disappointed. Oh gosh, silver's only $22 an ounce. It's a dumb investment. I'm not going to buy any. And pretty soon the market becomes stagnant because the prices become stagnant. At that point, we see premiums dip. That kind of re-energizes the market. Wow, I can get it cheap. Boom, now you see the price go up again. But we've seen the price creep up. At the same time, we've seen an increase in people selling to dealers, presumably some to take profits, others out of necessity and need because there are a lot of people hurting. In fact, I had a gentleman come in yesterday, a great customer, hadn't seen him in months. Hey, how are you doing? Well, I'm doing pretty good, but boy, I have to sell today. I feel terrible, but hopefully I'll be back and I'll be able to buy. But he was in a financial situation where he regrettably, it was tough for him, regrettably had to sell some metal. So the situation we're in now, do I think premiums are going to drop again? Yes. I would have to say, especially on gold. And quite frankly, we're seeing it a little bit, gold premiums on dealer to dealer trading. There's been opportunities where I could have bought gold Krugerrands, for instance, $10 under spot per ounce. But I had to buy like 40 of them because the dealer had a bunch dumped on him. I didn't want to hold 40 because Krugerrands aren't a huge seller for me. I sell mostly American gold, but there are going to be opportunities, and that's kind of where it starts. It's the dealer to dealer. If I can't move this to another dealer at this price, I probably have to sell it to a large wholesaler like Upstate for an even lesser price. Pretty soon they get inundated with product because no one else wants it. Now the premium has to come down and maybe even almost evaporate in order to move product. And to your point earlier, we saw it on silver rounds at one point. We saw it on 90% silver. But from a wholesale perspective, I haven't seen much of a change on gold premiums, even though we're pushing all-time highs almost every day. So I think there will be a pullback coming. We're just not there yet.
So what about the next 7 months, Josh? Like, we've seen gold and silver prices steadily increasing. We've seen, like we said earlier, gold hitting record all-time highs, over 30 times in the course of 7 months. What if that continues? Where is the point where gold gets too expensive for the majority of people? Like, how many people do you have coming in that are only able to buy a 10th ouncer right now? Well, what if a 10th ouncer is $500? Like, where is that where you're worried about? And obviously, we don't know for sure, but where do you really worry about it just basically being outpriced of the general stacker, general public?
Well, if we keep ratios between the two metals the same, let's just use for easier numbers for my brain when I'm going to spout off numbers. Let's say it's 80-1. I know it's not 80-1, but it's close. If gold hits 4,000, I mean, that's a huge jump from where we're at now. Could that happen in the next 6 or 7 months? Yeah. I also believe gold could backtrack under 2,000. I mean, take that for what it's worth. It's very unpredictable and very volatile. But let's just say gold does get to 4,000, and the state of our economy hasn't changed. I think that's probably to the point for a lot of people where it becomes, I'll use the term unaffordium. You can't afford gold anymore. At that point, if we're at an 80-1, that puts silver at $50 an ounce. Now, $50 an ounce silver, we have not seen since 2011. I'm assuming you were probably buying it at that price back then. I was too. Can it get there? Sure. Is that going to negatively impact demand? I think it depends on how quickly we get there. If it's a slow climb, like we've really seen lately, at least in silver, it's been kind of a slow climb. I think at some point people are going to turn off the switch and say, nope, 50 is too expensive, I'm not buying. But if it gets there quickly, I'll use the word again, in a frenzy, if we go from 31 and change today to 35 in a couple weeks, by the time we have our presidential election, we're at 40. If it goes up quickly, boy, it's going to be a wild time. And that's easy for people to get caught up in that. And I encourage you not to do that. If you're in that situation, try to leave emotion out of it. That's near impossible, but just be aware of your emotions and don't let them impact your buying decision. But yeah, I don't like predicting price, but that scenario could definitely happen. We could see it 6-7 months from now. Gold and silver could be flat. They could be down. One could be down, the other could be up. We really don't know, but I think we will get to a point eventually, maybe not in the next 6 or 7 months, where gold will become unaffordable to the masses. And quite frankly, I believe that's why so many governments are buying gold right now. At some point, they're not going to want the public to own it, or very few people in the public are going to be able to afford to own it. That's just kind of where I see it going. In terms of numbers, I'm not going to say, but in time, that definitely could happen. Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if that does happen. And I can kind of see where you are coming from with them not wanting people to be able to afford it at all. I mean, we're not going to get into politics here, but there's a lot I could say in that. So,
yeah.
Let me ask you this. If someone were to buy gold and silver, and I've asked you this so many times in our past conversations, but we're going to ask it again based on the last 7 months. If you look at the numbers, if you look at what gold has done, if you look at what silver has done, if someone were to buy gold or silver today, which one would you recommend today? And I know your answer, but let's just hear it anyway.
Silver. That's always going to, well, maybe not always, but that's been my answer for a long time. If we look back, now this was true 2 weeks ago, it might not be true today, but if you look back 365 days, 1 year, gold and silver had nearly identical gains in terms of percentages. This was 2 weeks ago. So if we look back 3 years or 1 year and 2 weeks ago, they have almost identical gains. So that's kind of surprising for a lot of people, I think, because what's gotten the attention? It's been gold because of these all-time highs. It keeps touching, crossing, busting through. My advice is silver. Silver is much more affordable. I believe, opinion, it's undervalued in relation to gold. So one of two things have to happen for that ever to straighten out. Either gold has to come down, or silver has to go up. There's no other way to shrink the ratio between the two. I, for one, don't necessarily believe gold is overvalued. I just think silver is undervalued. So in terms of affordability for most people, in terms of liquidity, especially for new stackers, I think silver is definitely the way to go. And I'm not doom and gloom. We can talk about barterability if there's, chaos in the world. I mean, just think of what's going on in parts of our country due to the hurricane. I mean, there's devastation everywhere. And my heart goes out to people in those areas and those that have lost people they know and love, and there's people missing. It's a horrible thing, but boy, your electricity's down, can't use credit cards, maybe you use silver to barter with your neighbor. Hey, I know you got this that I need. Can I give you this? I mean, sure, you might have cash, but if you can't go to a bank and withdraw your cash, what good does that do? So I just think silver, for a lot of reasons, is a better buy today. And I believe it's been a better buy for, probably the last 6 or 7 years, just because I believe there's a lot of stored potential there. Will we see it bust out? I don't know. But we've seen comparable gains in silver versus gold, and a lot of people don't realize that because it doesn't get the media attention that gold is getting.
That is a very, very good point, Josh. Thank you. So we will go ahead and cut it off there. It's been a long one, but guys, I just want to let you know that Josh has his own YouTube channel. I'm sure most of you know this, but if you don't, he does. There's a link for it in the description. Do me a favor, go over there and subscribe. He would appreciate that. And then if you're ever in the area for Minot, North Dakota, stop in and check out his shop. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Josh as much as I enjoyed speaking to him, because he is always so full of great info and insight, and Josh is just a great guest to have on the channel. In fact, a couple of weeks from now, I'm planning on having him on for one of my Saturday night live shows. So make sure you subscribe and don't forget to tune in for that when it pops up. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to hit that like on your way out. We'll see you next time.